Parents of children who have committed unspeakable crimes. How did you react and handle it? My parents shot and killed my sister and made it look like a suicide. So this doesn't answer Op's question, but it fits the reverse. To answer that question, it has affected me for my entire life. Not in a good way. It happened 30 plus years ago and not a day goes by that I don't think of her. She was 13. I was 8. Love you, Kathy. I'm so sorry you have experienced that. Do you mind if I ask what their motivation was? It's just so unfathomable to me. Back in the late 1970s, my brother 11 months younger and I were molested by a 18-year-old high school boy in our neighborhood. He took us out behind the house next door empty and forced us to do unspeakable things. I was 5 years old at the time and had no idea what was happening to us. I remember watching him brutalize my little 4-year-old brother and I began screaming for him to please stop. He threw my brother to the ground and began taking it out on me. When he was finished, he threw a weighted up $5 at my brother and said, "You'll tell anyone and I'll kill you." My mom saw the 5 on my brother and asked how we got the money. When I told my parents what had happened to us, they knew who the young guy was from our church. My dad called the parents, told them what happened, and they asked my parents to come over. In a surreal dream-like experience, my parents took us to their home, where they forced my brother and I to sit at the dining table with him while they all discussed events, and then made him apologize to us for what he did to us. Then we went home and never spoke of it again. I spent the next 30 something years struggling with major anxiety, depression, trust issues, sexual identity crisis, self-hate, self-harming, suicidal thoughts and attempts, years of drug and alcohol addiction. As an adult, I got up the courage to ask my parents about it. They remember nothing. I would not say I have or ever will recover fully, but I have a much better life now. I married the love of my life, and she has given me 4 gorgeous children. We live a very happy life. I live in great fear every day something like that may happen to my children, because I would murder anyone who hurt my children. Not me, but another person. I was on a jury and they were asking us if any family members had been involved in a violent crime. A woman came forward indicating her son had assaulted his wife and served time because of it. The prosecutor asked if she felt he had been treated fairly by the system. The woman, without missing a beat, says yes, he was, stating that she taught him right from wrong, that he chose wrong and deserved to be punished. Amazing woman. I instantly had immense respect for her. That's what any decent parent should do. Other way around, I was friends growing up with a brother and sister whose dad paid a hitman to kill their mom. Hitman shot the mom, but she survived. There was a mountain of evidence that the dad was behind it, but the sister denied all of it. Stayed on her dad's side. Helped coordinate his defense. Complete denial that I never understood, especially because it alienated her from her mom. Denied it even after he was convicted of the crime. The brother, on the other hand, saw reality as still close with his mom, but doesn't talk to his dad or sister. It's strange the lengths some people will go to reject reality to protect their preconceptions. I worked with a man whose son robbed, tortured, and killed an old lady in her home with 2 other men. His son is the one that actually killed the lady too. He wasn't able to come to terms with it and was in denial for a while. Eventually his son was convicted and sent to prison, and he never spoke about his son again. He did have a really sweet daughter that seemed to have a good head on her shoulders. The dad turned all his attention on her and was very proud of that one he raised. That's why I have 3 kids. Hedging my bets. Not sure which one is going to prison yet though. I had a classmate who committed a hit and run. He killed 2 people, a rickshaw driver and his passenger. His father, a very rich garment factory owner, sent his son to the UK to escape the very same day, bribed the police to not put a Barlow out, and sent his lawyers to discuss terms with the victim's family. One of the victim decides to press charges. The case is still ongoing, and the last time I saw my classmate's Sig story, he is partying in London. Man, duck that guy. This reminds me about the old Reddit thread written by the father of the demon son. Does anyone know which I'm talking about? It's a profound example of this exact situation. My brother is a bank robber who, after serving time, followed that up with arson. SWAT tracked him down. Live on evening news. Had relatives calling me from different continents. My employer requires a high security clearance. Security manager damn near lost his mind when I disclosed. Addendum. It seems to go with a great deal of these posts. The parents of the offenders swear by all the saints and holy relics their offspring is innocent. I didn't think to add that part with my middle of the night post. My mother swore brother did not rob that bank. He took me to the emergency room for stitches on that date. My brother was never held accountable for any of his misdeeds. That escalated throughout his teens, which led to the failed bank heist. I looked my mom in the eyes and said there are security camera photos of him that are date and time stamped. She'd just walk away from me. Stepfather too. He'd bitch about home, but would always give him money because of course. Regarding the arson, he and his GF had an altercation. She kicks him out of the house. He get drunk, high returns with full gas cans, yes plural, and completely douses the exterior of the home. Breaks in the house while GF and her adult son inside and go room to room dumping gas. GF and her son lock themselves in a room. SWAT, fire dept and cops roll up. I watch from my home. 3k miles away on their local news the entire circus play out with his arrest. There is more, but damn. Why? I haven't seen or spoke to him in over 10 years. I take assignments overseas, so he or my other family members can't just roll up, drop in to visit. Want nothing to do with them. Not quite the answer for OP, but my brother shot and killed my father after he refused to keep giving him money because he knew he was spending it on drugs, alcohol. Closing in on a year since it happened, and I'm still swimming, and sometimes it doesn't feel real. Trial hasn't started yet, but the defense is self-defense. When he walked into a house, my dad and other brother were remodeling and shot them both. Other bro got wounded and the gun jammed before he could finish my brother off. Edit. I'm doing fine. I have a fantastic support system. Wife. Other family and coworkers. Thank all you internet strangers for your concern. It really is touching and restored some of my faith in humanity. My other brother recovered from the GSW, but he has more mental anguish about the situation than I do. But he was literally there when it happened. I went to private school with a kid who brutally murdered one of our nuns. I believe his parents, who are in and from the Ukrainian, basically just let US handle it and never fought for their son. Pretty sure he's somewhere in prison, maximum security type thing. This was back in like 2002ish. The detective who handled the murder wrote a book about it. Pretty intense stuff. My mom just did a podcast interview about Inan and the whole things, as she was one of the first people on site after they found the body. I grew up with a pair of brothers who were involved with gangs. In our early 20s, one got out and became a cop, and one got in deeper and became a pimp. He was still invited to parties and holidays, was still included in family events. He was still loved by his family. His crimes got more and more extreme until he was finally charged with repeatedly raping one of his prostitutes. She was not yet 13, so he was charged with 4 counts of rape of a child. There was a rumor going around our friend group that the charge was not real and that the whole thing was trumped up by his baby mama. I asked the brother about it, and his exact words were, "I wish that was true." No, they have DNA. The cop brother was devastated. The pimp is now in jail for life, and the brother does not talk about him at all. I grew up around some brothers who murdered their dad. I guess their plan was to claim he was sexual abusing them, and they ganged up on him due to that. 3 of the brothers ratted out brother number 4, and he went away for a year or so. They were minors. He was pretty awful before he went in, but when he came out, he was beyond the pale. Whenever I'd see him, he'd chat me up. He thought we were friends because I treated him like a human being when everyone else hated or feared him. He had some truly ducked up stories to tell. I'm not the parent, but my father kidnapped, raped a woman. He then ran from the police for about a week, and when they cornered him, he committed suicide. Having a family member so close to you commit such a heinous crime is difficult to process. You have to rethink everything you ever thought about them. Well, I never had a great opinion of my father. He was extremely abusive. Even so, I never thought he would do something as bad as that. I reacted pretty much the only way I could, which was distancing myself from the situation. It became a pretty big deal for a few months after. It seemed like everyone in my city was talking about it. People I didn't even know were reaching out and offering their sympathy. It was a pleasant surprise that most people were kind and didn't try to make me feel bad. I have pretty much come to accept what has happened with little emotion. Although I'm still haunted by the fact that an innocent woman had to be victimized by his evil acts. One of the employees at the golf club I go to took his son in when he got out of prison for gang-related violence. Poor guy has schizophrenia and they were trying to help him. A few weeks ago the guy never showed up to his shift. They sent a wellness check as he never missed a shift without calling in 20 years. Police found him and his wife murdered by their son who still hasn't been found. Not a parent, but I have a sibling who is in prison for double homicide. They murdered a girl who I had gone to elementary school with and her father after a botched BE. They also seriously injured the mother and threatened the other child. I watched my mother, who was already arguably unstable, fall victim to deep depression and severe anxiety. She now suffers from agoraphobia and has severe trust issues and few friends. She still keeps in touch with my sibling on a weekly basis. I, however, haven't spoken to them since I turned 18 and was given a choice, so to speak, to how she handled it. Not well. She spent years in therapy that I personally don't think resolved much. I think she still has the mentality of "that's my child," but I can't wrap my head around that. I certainly prefer to think of myself as an only child. Sorry for the vague-ish details, but I didn't want to get too specific about it. Not my kid, but my cousin's. She and her husband adopted a kid from foster care when he was in kindergarten. His parents had surrendered him. The social worker confirmed that my cousin did not plan to have more kids. They had 2 school-aged daughters, and that the adopted kid would stay the youngest. Within 6 months, the daughters were sleeping together in one bedroom, and they had an exterior lock on the door. My cousin was spending a ton of time taking this kid to therapy. He had some sort of attachment disorder. They thought. No. He was autistic. No. He had early signs of schizophrenia. No. Round and round. My cousin was sure he just needed love. Turns out there's no therapy for ducking evil. His purpose in life was to get younger kids alone and molest them, hurt them, make them cry, rip their clothes off, shove toys into them. By the time he was 12 he was in a facility, but he was released the day he turned 18. Within 2 days he was caught raping a 7-year-old boy, and there was overwhelming evidence he had raped a 2-year-old the previous day. My cousin never mentions him. It's like he never existed. He's in prison, and I hope he never gets out. Not a relative, but a fellow student. Popular guy in my class, who sat behind me in homeroom, and had the locker next to mine. After having an argument with his mother about his grades and him getting a job to help support them, he shot and killed her with a revolver he apparently purchased from someone at our school. This happened on a Friday. He hid her body in the apartment under a pile of clothes and a TV, and threw parties there on Saturday and Sunday. On Monday and Tuesday, he came to school like nothing happened. Then Wednesday, he used her car and credit cards to go on a road trip. It wasn't until Thursday that the apartment manager found the body after multiple neighbors complained about a smell. It really freaked people out that he did it. Even more so for those who got invited to the party. And the evidence that was brought to trial made parents start to question how the school system could have prevented it. As of writing this, he has about another decade to go on his sentence. There was a similar case like this in Florida. Kid killed his parents and then threw parties all weekend while their bodies were in their bedroom. Then another one, which was very different, but honestly might be the worst thing I've ever heard. A married couple basically adopted a kid from their neighborhood who was being abused and neglected. They took her in, raised her, fed her, and basically treated her like one of their own. As an adult, she shows up on their doorstep with her new boyfriend and they excitedly invite them in and begin catching up on life. The parents divulge they recently sold their home and now have a modest nest egg and they are going to retire into a simple and peaceful life. I don't remember how much money it was. It was a lot, but it really wasn't a ton of money. Well, they leave the dinner and devise a scheme. They go back to the house. kidnap the parents, and steal everything they can. Then the daughter, along with 3 men, take them out to the middle of nowhere and bury them alive. The parents begged and cried the whole time, and the girl they took in and saved couldn't care less. Edit. Holy shit, this blew up. Seems like it's sparking a lot of interest. Here is a full story link told by the amazing John Bullen 416, who delivers the strange, dark, and mysterious in story format. You can probably tell by my summary that it is not for the faint of heart. A good friend of mine's son set fire to a house and ended up killing 4 children and left the mother in a coma. The son did not mean to murder anyone, but is now in prison for the rest of his life. The father, my friend, committed suicide 2 years ago. Absolute tragedy for everyone involved, especially the mother who lost all of her children. Edit. At this point people have figured out who I'm talking about and where it happened. I won't be sharing any personal details about names and the specifics out of respect for everybody involved. RIP to everyone and Todd. I hope he's doing alright, wherever he is now. Edit. To quite a few people are upset with me saying he did not mean to murder anyone. I will say that he absolutely intended to set fire to the house. It was no accident, but did not have the intentions of killing them innocent children. This was a nightmare for both the victim's family and my friend's family, who ultimately started drinking heavily after what his son had done and then decided he had enough. A couple of cousins of mine beat their friend up in their living room while drunk high, culminating in one of them hitting the guy in the head with an unopened beer can. They woke up in the morning and the guy was still there in the living room, head split open, cold, dead, and with their dog licking his face. They cut him to pieces in the bathtub and disposed of the body in a local fishing lake. Someone went fishing one day and caught a leg, complete with tattoo. They ended up in prison. I'm not sure how it happened, but one of them died in his cell. The other is still locked up. We don't talk about them much, but it's something I think about from time to time. My brother used to have bad anger issues when he was drunk, and would sometimes end up fighting people because of it. One night we came home wasted and were trying to sleep for work, but our neighbor was shouting and arguing with his daughter out the front of their house. Fed up with the noise, my bro takes an empty beer bottle, walks outside, breaks the bottle on their mailbox, and stabs him in the neck. He snaps out of his rage. A moment later, after seeing the blood pouring out of this guy's neck, he calls an ambulance and the police and tells the daughter to keep pressure on her dad's neck while he walks home and wakes us up to tell us what he just did. Our neighbor ended up dying on the way to the hospital. The court case dragged out for 1.5 years, with my parents eventually getting divorced after the sentencing because of their clashing views of their son. My dad felt like he had failed as a father and could never come to terms with what my bro did. My mom, however, and felt like we should come together for him and try as often as we could to visit him. It's been 6 years since then and it still haunts me. I can't seem to shake this deep feeling of guilt that I have. I was the one that dragged him to come out drinking that night, knowing how violent he gets. But as bad as I feel right now, it will never compare to that girl losing her father right in front of her. When I was in middle school, there was a kid who was mentally challenged. He spent much of his time destroying stuff in the playground. One day he came to school with a lighter and took it out in the playground and started burning Butterfly. It was pretty horrific for 11-year-old me, and he was suspended for about 4 days. He spiraled out of control in HS when he started burning animals like kittens and rabbits. It was pretty ducked up. His parents had seemed to given up on him and never actually told him to stop. 4 years ago he was arrested for homicide and murder of a family of 6. He lit their house on fire with gasoline and a blowtorch. It was all up in the local news. In court, he said that the family gave him inhumane looks and said bad remarks about him, which made him angry. He followed them home from the local park and burned the house at 1 a.m. He was sentenced to 56 years in special care prison because he had a mental disability. At first his parents didn't react to it, almost as if they expected it. But a year later the father committed suicide and the mom got Alzheimer's. It was pretty sad to hear about the whole ordeal, and especially about the father, who was a pretty nice guy.